We're back, and this is definitely the high point of my week. It is just another interview for our guest, but he is in the midst of many of them, and I'm hoping that it will be as memorable for our audience as it certainly will be for me. Our guest is Brad Thor, the extraordinary author of some 15 books now on various topics addressing, in the most thrilling, the most provocative of ways, the national security challenges of our time. He is extraordinarily good at it and has sold something like 11.5 million copies. But that doesn't take into account the ones that will be sold for the new book, Code of Conduct, Act of War, Hidden Order, Blacklist, Full Black are other ones, but Code of Conduct is the one we're delighted to have a chance to talk with him about today. Brad Thor, thanks so much for joining us and for this terrific new book.
Frank, it is always my pleasure to be with you. And I'll tell you, as a thriller author, as somebody who writes fiction, I can't tell you what a nice introduction that was. Thank you.
It is heartfelt, and it is warranted, needless to say. Listen, if you can, briefly, tell us a little bit about Code of Conduct. I'm partway through it and just transfixed by it, but I don't want you to get too much out there, but enough to get our audience engaged, as I know they will be in this book as they have in the past.
Well, so my job is to give people a white-knuckle, edge-of-their-seat thrill ride. So if you want to take it to the lake, to the pool, to the beach, I'm selling escape. That's what I do. I'm an entertainer. But I call what I do faction, where you don't know where the facts end and the fiction begins in my thrillers. And I was captivated by two real-life events that I said, if I can put these into this summer's book, this will be the most exciting book I've ever written. And the two items are, number one, somebody spent a fortune erecting what people have called the American Stonehenge down in Georgia. They're called the Georgia Guidestones. And it is a set of these huge slabs of rock that are basically predicting an incredible forced reset of the world. It's this globalist agenda. Now, I'm not a black helicopter tinfoil hat guy, but I thought, wow, this is fascinating because a lot of the things that were called for, nobody knows who erected these stones down in Georgia, but a lot of the things they're calling for also got leaked a couple of years ago out of a very top secret United Nations meeting in the Austrian Alps. And I've never included the UN in any of my books because I hold them in such low esteem.
It gets you to the black helicopter pretty quick, doesn't it?
Exactly. And that's not my style, and that's not what my thrillers are about. But as I see some of these issues bubbling up with different people that I consider villains, whether it's a George Soros or a Maurice Strong, I just thought, wow, if I can weave just a tiny bit of this into my new thriller, it's going to be fascinating, especially set against Washington, D.C., which in Code of Conduct, I call the new Rome on the Potomac. There is no collapsing real estate prices there. Paychecks are only going up. And I tell my children that D.C. is like Jabba the Hutt from Star Wars. If you suggest Jabba go on a diet, he's going to send Boba Fett after you in the form of a weaponized IRS, EPA, whatever it may be. So to take kind of an international espionage story and mix in some of these things that are starting to jump up in front of me and say, hey, you know what? Some of these things warrant people paying attention to. That's the fun for my novels. You actually have that great beat read, but you close the book hopefully smarter. You walk away from a great piece of fiction saying, all right, I can actually talk about some of these things, and I'd like to know some more about it.
Yeah, that's the key thing. I think you really are opening doors to all of us to focus on matters that really could be determinative of our future security. And I love the concept of faction because you really are bringing an awful lot of facts and insights into real-world operations and capabilities, but doing it in a very deft and fictionalized way. Brad Thor, let me ask you about one of the other issues that I know has vexed you and informed some of your faction in the past, and that is the vulnerability of our electric grid. I was talking earlier in the program with Congressman Lee Zeldin about this as a concern, and I know it is for you, whether it's induced by the kind of attacks that your characters address in book after book, or from naturally occurring phenomenon. How serious a problem do you think this really represents?
I think it's a huge problem, and I dealt with it in my thriller last summer, Act of War. I think it's a huge problem that we all need to be tuned into. And I will say something to you, Frank, and to your listeners, particularly about this issue. If anyone has any doubt whether or not what Edward Snowden did was a good thing or a bad thing, he exposed the mass collection of metadata by the NSA. He's a bad guy. And the American public has no idea how badly we have been compromised and how much he has handed over to the Russians and the Chinese. I will say this, the fact that the Russians can shoot down a jetliner with absolutely no consequences, that they can go in and take the Crimean Peninsula with no consequences, shows you how impotent the United States is now to stand up to Russia because we don't have any force. We have lost any ability to threaten them with consequences because of Snowden. So this idea of an EMP weapon being used, there's been talks, everybody laughed at the North Koreans when they had their underground tests several years ago, and they said the yield was so bad. Well, the yield may be unimpressive if you think they're developing a conventional nuclear weapon. If they are miniaturizing things that could be used for EMP purposes, that suddenly takes on a whole new light. So, I hate to be on someone's program and promote books other than my own, but I love reading, and there's 365 days in the year, and I love turning people on to great books. And probably the best piece of fiction, one of my favorite all-time books that dealt with an EMP was William Forstchen's book called 1 Second After. And I get chills just saying the title. It was fantastic. So if somebody's looking for an additional great beach read this summer, I highly recommend it. They will walk away going, I get it, and I'm terrified, but what a great thriller that was.
Let me just say, we're talking with Brad Thor. He is the author most recently of Code of Conduct. Read it first, and then, because you'll read it very quickly, it is the kind of thing you truly can't put down, then turn, as you say, to Bill Forstchen's book. Let me ask you in closing, Brad, because you have a sense of the vox populi as well as how to appeal to it. President Obama has made much of the fact that we're better respected around the world. What you've just said about Russia, for example, certainly suggests otherwise. Looking forward to the 2016 election, how important is it to you, do you think, and to the American people that we engage in a kind of course correction to get that respect rooted once again in sort of what Reagan called peace through strength?
Well, you just read my mind. I know that you and I have a shared love of President Reagan, and peace through strength is exactly what I was going to say, and that needs to be at the very forefront. And the way we get peace through strength is a president who believes in our military and also has the tools to help us rebuild our economy, because when the American economy is strong and we are humming along, that really smooths the road in so many other areas. So the economy is very important, but also a president who believes in our military. And I don't know if you know this, but I have thrown in with Governor Perry, who ran the 12th largest economy in the world, Texas, and if he can do for the United States, and I spent a lot of time with him because I was unimpressed with his debate performance last time around. So I went in and rhetorical ring with him and boxed with him for several days on foreign policy, domestic policy issues, all the way down to monetary policy. And I walked away very, very impressed, not only by his intelligence, but his leadership skills and his commitment to the United States, and his belief, which I share and I know you share, that our best days as a nation are in front of us. They are not behind us. We don't need to go back to the 1990s of the Clintons. America is great, and America will re-achieve that greatness and be a beacon for the world once again, but it matters that we put the right person in the White House. Obviously, my choice is Governor Perry. People may have other choices, but this really is an incredibly important election.
Brad Thor, I'm afraid we have to leave it at that. I cannot tell you how much I look forward to completing my own reading of Code of Conduct, your terrific new best-selling book. I'm quite confident out on the 7th of July. We thank you for this time you've taken to discuss both it and other matters of state, and for the great job you're doing helping all of us understand how important our personal responsibility for thinking about them and voting concerning them is. Keep it up, my friend. I hope you'll come back to us again very soon. Next up, we will be talking with Diana West. We'll visit with her about George Orwell's birthday and insights into so much, including the president's conduct with respect to Cuba. That and more, straight ahead.